Until I've had that first piping hot pot of coffee. I've tried other enemas. I got some new underwear the other day. Well, new to me. When Maddie hired us to do this series of shows, everybody wanted to go first, and it came down to Dave and Renee. And Maddie said, okay, I'm going to give you a quiz. Whoever does the best gets to go first. Send them off to do the quiz. They do the quiz. They come back. Maddie grades it. She goes, oh, you both got 99 out of 100, so Renee, you get to go first. Dave says, why? That's not fair. We got the same score. Wow. Maddie says, well, Dave, on Renee's quiz, on number 47, she wrote, I don't know. And on your quiz, beside number 47, you wrote, I don't know either. All right. Sorry about this intro, but I didn't know quite what Maddie expected of me. She came to me a couple of months ago and said, I got this great idea for a new show. You come in, you select a group of songs, you tell interesting stories to introduce them about where they're from, what they mean. And she says I gave her the Canadian eye roll, whatever that is. But it might have been because I unjustifiably thought she wanted me to do a house concert, because what she was explaining seemed like it had some resemblance to this. This is the handout that we have for the last 10 or 15 years at all our house concerts, and that we give to anybody who wants to hire us. And buried here in the fourth sentence of the first paragraph under house concert, it says, we explain where the songs come from and tell stories as part of the format. Since it is literally a concert, the people are seated and remain respectfully quiet during the song. So, shame on me. So I said to Maddie, Maddie says, no, I want way more talking. And I said, well, I just got here from Ralph's, and the cashier said, have a good day. I said, you too. I went to the bank. The teller says, can I help you, Mr. Hill? I said, I'd like to make a withdrawal. And based on a still continuing body of similar evidence, Maddie, everybody can talk just as good as me. But I've spent thousands of hours learning how to play the guitar and the piano and the harmonica, and Maddie is like, I want less of this, more of this. I'm thinking, all right, well, I've spent 100 hours generating and honing and rehearsing spoken introductions to dozens of my songs over the years for festivals and concerts. Maddie's like, I can't expect my audience to endure an hour of things that you've thought about. Aren't you hearing anything I'm saying? So I finally figured out that she wanted me to work on my stand-up routine. Get that right? I didn't really want to do this, not publicly, but Maddie, I have to thank you. It may have been an ill-conceived and a terrible idea with regard to me, but it was a great idea with regard to Renee. By a show show of hands, how many of you saw both Renee and Dave's show the past month? Me too. And we saw two masters of their specific crafts, and we heard two wonderful stories. And both of those people are major influences on my life and dear friends. And one of them is a dear friend and an arch nemesis. Maybe we can tug at the thread of that gunny sack of material a little later. If you left Renee's show with a smile on your face and feeling like some of the gray area had been removed with regard to the fascinating arc of her musical life. And if you left Dave's show wiping the tears from your face, wondering if there's more you can do for your fellow man. My manifesto, to use a word, is to send like 40 of you out into that yard in an hour from now going, Modest, I know, I concede, but it's something that I think I can do. So songs, I'm going to talk a little about how they come to me and what they're about, a little bit about the process, and in the telling you'll hear some biographical material, and if my story is too dull, as I suspect it is, don't fret, I've prepared a couple of anecdotes about other people that are interesting. And we can revisit those in the Q&A by way of salvaging an afternoon you guys have put aside to listen to this. So, I was born in Memphis, Tennessee at a very young age to two Canadian parents. My father, who would become a surgeon, an orthopedic surgeon later on, he was getting his internship at the University of Memphis when my sister and later I was born. Shortly after I was born, my family moved to Vancouver, British Columbia, and a couple of years after that, I found them. Elvis Presley suffered only one injury in his life. When he injured his little finger in a game of touch football, it was my father who set the king's splint. And it was my dad who did not recognize whose splint he set. I've chosen to interpret these almost impossible to reconcile facts as evidence of my dad's capacity to focus on what was most important in front of him at the expense of everything else.
Sounds familiar.
Music was not that important to my mother, although somehow she learned how to read it, she could play the piano, she could sing, but I think these skills were an extension of her raised on the prairies paradigm of learning how to do everything herself. She had been a nurse. The same hands that played the piano were equally adept with a skill saw, her own table saw, a jackhammer, every gardening tool known to man, and of course, a sewing machine and knitting needles. I never knew her to say anything like, "Look at what I've done." Expressions of pride were universally extended to others, and absent any commentary on the subject that I can remember, I conclude that she must have thought her life and work should speak for itself. She left behind a lot of beauty. And when I was like 13 or 14, not knowing what I was asking of her, I brought a cover of my favorite album for her. I showed this to her. I said, could you do something like this for me? You know how to sew. And she did.
Beautiful.
Mom did a better job on the album.
Now, my father worked extremely long hours, and music was very important to him. Classical and opera primarily. I inherited from him not the style of music, but the role of music function. He used to go into our living room and listen to it in solitude. I believe he turned to music for the same reason mystics turn to prayer and meditation, to silence the voices in his head, and to feel deeply without apology or explanation. When he passed away in 2013, I wrote this song for him. In the last couple of days of his life, and I got the title from my closest Canadian friend, who, when he was trying to express his grief, he said, it's as if a great big light somewhere has gone out. And it would make me feel great if you would sing along to the parts that you know. My dad would have. Light a candle, light a candle, light a candle, light a candle. A great big light went out tonight. Light a candle. A great big light went out tonight. Light a candle. I can't wait to fall asleep these days, it seems. You're gone from here. I will see you in my dreams. So light a candle. I care, 'cause I was cared for. I listen, 'cause I was heard. I learned to fight, 'cause I was defended. I have hope beyond this sorrow, 'cause your faith in me endured. So light a candle. A great big light went out tonight. Light a candle. A great big light went out tonight. Light a candle. A great big light went out tonight. Light a candle. A great big light went out tonight. Light a candle. I can't wait to fall asleep these days, it seems. You're gone from here. You're gone from here. You're gone from here. Sorry, I gotta keep referring to these, it's the age.
More talking.
So me and my 3 siblings were forced to take 5 years of piano each. And I had the good fortune of having my parents ground down by my 3 older siblings. And when they got to me, they let me off the hook after 2 years if I would take up another instrument. So I took up the guitar and I learned how to hate that too. I was an athlete by disposition. I was big for my age. I was used to being good at things fast. And when you start with music, you're terrible. Especially to a child, you're terrible for a long time. And I was the kind of kid who spent my day with my ear plastered to the radio. And I would call up the radio stations and make requests. And then I would listen all day for when they would play it. And when I was old enough, I started buying records. I bought Cosmos Factory by Creedence Clearwater Revival. And like my father, I would go into the living room and I would sit in that chair and I would open up the album and I would learn all the lyrics. And in my mind, I would learn all the guitar parts and the drum fills. And music was my first exposure to a concept that I now know as the classic double bind. That is when you live impossibly within 2 mutually exclusive realities. For example, I wanted to be, and kind of thought myself as being like great, 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 but I was by nature lazy. With respect to music. And somehow, with all effort to avoid practice, I learned how to strum along and sing. And the pleasure, the contentment of that simple act has sustained me to this day. Today, one of my most comforting moments is when all the stuff is set up to stand in front of my stage monitor, strum the guitar, and hear it amplified richly back to me. And I know that everything's going to be okay. If I look to my left and I see Renee Safier, I know it's going to be good. If I look to my right and I see Tracker Dave and Tracker Russ, I put on my helmet and I brace myself. So songs. Music is its own language. Great songs communicate before they are understood. Now I'm going to talk about lyrics, but that's just because it's easier to speak in the language that we all use. It's impossible for me to communicate to you or to any other musician what a melody or a rhythm or the tone of an electric guitar or the timbre of a this or that human voice, why it's powerful, why it's good or otherwise. These are all things that need to be experienced, to be appreciated, and conversely, they cannot be appreciated through talk. But we can talk about words. Before I get to that, I've worked out this little thing that in my mind it was interesting. I hope that I've had second thoughts about it. This is the thing. With regard to process, when I'm writing a song, they come in different ways, but a recurring way is I happen upon the primary musical component by accident. And so it might be 2 or 4 measures long, but essentially it's very short, okay? And if I were famous, this would be like the best part of the afternoon. But I'm obscure, and so it might just sound like some clown noodling, after their sound check when you want to listen to the house music. But what I want to do is I want to play you a bunch of these snippets, and then we'll talk about them. All right? So, primary musical component. Just as
That was blood from a rock right there.
there's the problem. Sorry. We'll get to alternate tunings a little later in today's program. Yeah, I
You
should
can blame
have
it on me.
tuned.
The
Yeah.
last song was Fuse 32 last night. Sorry.
No, it's my fault. Over rehearsing. Yeah. So, primary musical components.
I forgot this song.
Better than I thought.
Everything disappears. They're my three favorite.
And wait a minute. This is your favorite song.
Hollywood Nightmare.
Holy macaroni.
Just the tip of the iceberg.
Wait, I stopped.
And the rest of it?
Oh, man. This is wrong. Oh.
Oh, yes.
Now, each of these snippets, when I first played them by accident, I had an emotional reaction. I thought, that's interesting, that's neat. And I place enormous importance on that moment as it's the only moment in my life, not my life Andy Hill, but my life songwriter, and in the life of the song's possible evolution, where I'm in the chair of the listener, where I experienced the element of surprise like you do, and in a tangibly positive way. Every moment up until that time, in the hour or 2 hours or month or 6 months of noodling, prior to that, there has been no tangibly positive emotional response. That moment sets off a period of time where the phones don't get answered, the girlfriend gets ignored, appointments are forgotten about. Following that clue, that secret in an envelope to the next hiding place, that's the call of the tambourine man that Bob Dylan sings about. Cast your dancing spell my way, he implores his muse. I promise to go under it. I'm ready to go anywhere. Now, thankfully now we have these. So if you have one of these moments, you can just press, let's see, voice memo. Fuse 32. And hey Siri, can you remind me of a dentist appointment at 3 o'clock? Pick up some sushi from Ralph's for Lorna on the way home.
Sushi from
There you go. Everybody wins. Now, everything that's musical after that, for me, is basically manual labor, problem solving, T crossing, I dotting, whatever you want to call it. The lyrics are something else, and I need to consult my notes about those. With regard to process, I like to experiment. There are certain things that happen more often than others, but these are the kinds of songs I've written. I have a song where I wrote all of the lyric first. It's called After All That's Passed Between Us. The song A Wish Into a Dream, I wrote all of the music and then all of the lyric. I have a song that existed for 7 years in one form, and then I realized the lyric was atrocious and rewrote the whole thing and new title and new chorus. That's called Little Virgin Ego on Now That the Future's Behind Us. I've sat on a musical idea for decades before finding a complementary lyric. That last thing that I just played, I've been playing that since the summer of 1985. It will be released in the year of our Lord 2019. That means it took 34 years to write. I thought I should leave that out of today's presentation and put that in the lecture about how not to write a song. I've self-consciously attempted to write in a genre. I got a few blues songs. There's a song I wrote for Jimmy Sachs called A Habit That's Going Around. I wanted that to be like a jazz standard. I wrote a song based on a phone conversation I had with Renee Safier. She was cold, so I wrote the 14th of February.
That's what I was.
Only a broken hearted.
Only broken-hearted, but you guys are all kind of cool.
And I've collaborated. Now, collaboration is a mixed bag. If I'm working on the music to something with somebody, that's pretty good. I don't have any memories of having somebody reject a musical idea and feeling one way or the other about it. It's some of you know our song, The Night That I Left Town. My contribution to that song is the extended guitar solo at the end, and which parenthetically I don't consider songwriting. That's what you want from the guys that are in your band or someone you hire to play on your song, is to bring their skill set and their personality to your work. But with the material that means the most to me, my songwriting has primarily been an exercise in drilling through the tough, resistant and often misleading upper layers of the conscious mind to root out, bear witness to, occasionally learn from the contents, the motivations, the hidden truths of the unconscious in an attempt to bring them to the light of my day in a way that's not embarrassing. Now, it's hard enough for me to do that in the privacy of my own mind. It's to confront my true motivations. It's another layer of difficult to sit across from my collaborator who wants to know what the words of the bridge are going to be, and you're going to reach into that abyss and go, how about this? But having said that, collaboration has yielded some amazing experiences. And the next song I'd like to play is a collaboration. This one I'm going to retune for to avoid that little comic relief from that thing that happened earlier. This is a song that I wrote with Tracker Dave and Tracker Russ. It's called Blood on the Tracks. Now, some of you know that Blood on the Tracks is the name of Bob Dylan's greatest album. So you could say we got the title from a combination of Sierra Nevada and hubris. Now here's the story behind this song. I brought to Dave and to Russ what I thought was a finished song. There was a structure, there was a rhyme scheme that was both resilient and flexible. There was a little guitar lick, there was a chord progression, the way the punchline landed worked. And I brought 6 intensely personal verses. And the reason I know that I thought it was finished is because I would not have brought an intensely personal anything, anywhere, at any time, to anyone, unless I thought it was done. I said a minute ago, it's an effort to bring this stuff to the light of my day in a way that's not embarrassing. So I thought it was done. I didn't get the response I expected. I finished the song, and instead of saying, okay, let's work on our parts and we'll, press play and record, Dave said something like, okay, well, starting with the breath you took before you uttered your first word. Why don't we chip away at this roughly hewn boulder rolled into Tracker headquarters and see if there's anything inside it. For the next 4 or 5 hours, we tore into that lyric, line by line, verse by verse. And it took me to psychological places I very much resisted. I was afraid I was going to lose something. But because of the intelligence, the confidence, and the cocoon of respect in that small room, I got out alive. And with a much better song. And the personal component that I was so protective of. I've been playing the song a few years now, and it may even have broadened and deepened thanks to the directions that these two guys took the song. She was waiting at the intersection for her life to change. By accident or detonation, or something just as strange. I was quick to react, I was slow to think. With my elbow out the window, I said, buy me a drink. He left others to sift through the facts and the blood on the tracks. I washed up on the Blue Nile, just outside of Khartoum. She smiled at me and said, I haven't seen you since the womb. No injury I suffered when unhealed by her touch. Beauty is a privilege till love becomes a crutch. After which there could be no second acts, just blood on the tracks. She had the shoulders of a farm girl, high water from a well, with almond eyes of cold steel, or a story she'll never tell. She'd made her journey across the black fog of the Mekong, just to stay alive, but never to stay long. With her head upon my chest, I said, baby, relax, it's all blood on the tracks. Now I'm walking down the tracks alone, just waiting on a train. In the softness of a saxophone, I hear that lonesome strain. She'd grown weary of her lover, but she hadn't told me yet. She was shopping for another to lay a bigger, better bed. And accidentally stepping on the cracks, I noticed blood on the tracks. In the bicycle casino, she was looking for an easy mark, walking like a courtesan, circling like a shark. She would double down when no one else had the guts. Were you counting cards, babe, or was it just your luck? I busted, and I knew the deck was stacked next to the blood on the track. She took a lover with the same name as someone who was famous. Close enough for me, she said, as money will maintain us. Yeah, but she used to be the figure the artist couldn't paint. I used to be the sculptor's clay before it took its shape. And now we're patrons amongst the artifacts of a blood on the tracks. Sometimes I dream about my mother. I forget she's not alive. I put together what I know And in that moment she survives. When I realize I'm just chasing memories, memories truer than the world in front of me. I've learned the things you can't bring back, are etched in blood on the tracks. The things you can't bring back, are etched in blood on the tracks. Yeah, the things you can't bring back, are etched in blood on the tracks. Thank you very much. And if you detected the influence of Bob Dylan, I will direct you to the good work being done in our community by the title trackers as to why that is. And Bob Dylan also influenced this next song, but in a completely different way. In the mid-90s, I ordered a tape from a guy I didn't know, a Bob Dylan collector in Australia, and on the cassette was something called the infamous slow version of Tangled Up in Blue. And I put this cassette in my big white van, and I listened to it as I was running my errands, and I listened to it for weeks on end, several times a day, just listening, rewinding, listening again. And eventually my inner monologue took on the rhythm and the cadence of that lyric. And in the only instance of my life, I awoke from a deep sleep and I wrote, and I wrote. And I have that original manuscript here. Now, this is old and in bad shape, so be careful.
Oh, wow.
That's awesome.
The relevant part is between the two yellow pieces of paper.
What?
So so be careful with it. Now, also know that I'm aware I write in 9-point Cro-Magnon font. So, there's lots of secrets in there, but you won't be able to read what they are. But what I would point out, if you pass it around, is in the margins. In the margins, you'll see little markings like, actually that you can leave that, it's just gonna fall off in a minute. In the margins, there are little markings like 4A, 2B, 1C, stuff like that. In the days after this episode of automatic writing, I would return to this and I noticed that there were themes and there were characters. And I started to rearrange them, and that's what those markings are. Things that seemed to be related to one another, I put next to each other, and that generated a new lyric sheet that I typed out and carried around with me. And to my astonishment, a narrative was there. There was a story, but it was told in the language of dreams. A character here, an image there, a metaphor here, a bit of philosophy there. Turns out that the very first thing that I wrote were the last 4 lines of the song. Looking back on it now, it was part of the plan. Part of me loved her, part of me ran. Part of me's with her even when she's with her man, and part of her is with me no matter where I am. The beginning of the song shows up halfway into the 4th page. This is the song that most closely reflects what I was talking about earlier of drilling through the conscious to get to the contents of the unconscious. When we recorded the piano, the drums, the bass, and the vocal in one take, and later on I hired 2 saxophone players, a guy named Jimmy Z and a woman named Robin Rader. Whenever the male character is present, Jimmy would improvise, and whenever the female character is present, Robin would play. And there's a moment in every verse where the 2 saxophones come together in what I hoped would be sort of a Van Morrison moment, and they would play this theme. And since we're in this room, in this special place, in an unusual environment, Patty and Renee,
Nice.
I wonder if I could ask you to sing this little saxophone theme. I'll play it for you now so you can learn it. Renee, occasionally you sung this song, but Patty, we're in E flat. Sorry about this next 30 seconds, everybody. Your part would be 3, 4. So that's a mistake, my fault. That's it, 3, off. 1, 2, 3, off. And so it happens there you go. And you can ooh right from your seats. I think that to hear it in this sort of disjointed way might reflect in some interesting way how the song was written. This is called Too Close to the Heart.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Folded upright in his bed one night and watched the shapes disappear. The walls of the tomb became his empty room as his vision began to clear. He heard a voice say, "What do you want from me?" He recognized it as his own. And the night's reply was a silent sigh, like a breath coming over the phone. He glanced at a letter from a pleading woman he'd known some years ago. It was the single trait that would seal his fate. Never could have let it go. He was there from the start, too close to the heart. Money makes men mad sometimes, and took its toll on Jim, till she didn't feel honest with the love she'd promised and split before she caved in. He really must have loved the girl. They say he had her house burned down, her business assets frozen, and all of her friends followed all over town. She paused leaving awning and removed a ring. With a tear she shined a stone. She gave it to a bum on the side of the road, said it ain't much, but it's your own. Before I take it back, depart, because it's still too close to the heart. She dreamed of wide open spaces and hours on the clock to kill, and me the urgency of life's moment, the paranoia and the thrill. She wasn't exactly innocent, but guilty ain't the word for it. She was more like her accusers than any of them would ever written did. I felt my mind cloud over as I touched the curve of her spine. We exploded together in a moment, never to become completely unentwined. I'll leave out the next part because it's still too close to the heart. She floated up into the hills one night, built a fire to keep herself sane, made a list of every burning bridge and offered it to the flame. She thought about love on a one-night stand and how hard that was to explain. He had what it took to take what she had. At the time it didn't seem so vain. And all the way down the coastline road, the sea breeze blew her name. In the back of her head, a photographer said, "You're overexposed, honey. Move on to the next foray." She felt the fire crackle and spark, but she shivered close to the heart. Let me tell you honestly, he said, she knew that he was about to lie. She couldn't sit in the same room still, so she ran out of the bar to cry. She heard a band play Tangled Up in Blue from a tape machine on the dash. But it wasn't the version she thought she knew all the time that she heard it last. It slowed it down till she thought she'd drown in a river running down, and she cursed on time for every rhyme that now made her feel weak. They used to make her feel so smart until they landed close to the heart. Nobody left to talk to. She hired a listening ear. He knew then that he'd gone too far, but it didn't have it in him just to disappear. She saw a carpenter building a church. They caught an arsonist burning it down. She tried to figure who'd have done him more damage if he could have got his business off the ground. Looking back on it now, it was part of the plan. Part of me loved her, part of me ran. Part of me's with her even when she's with her man, and part of her's with me no matter where I am. All for the sake of the art. That's me, close to the heart. So influences, people like to know who you're influenced by, and obviously for genius, inexplicable X factor, that would be Bob Dylan.
Wow.
Form, transparency, that'd be Leonard Cohen. Her work ethic, sincerity, Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
That sounds like a Bruce.
Personal style, Pete Townsend and the Who.
Nice.
Nice.
Bravado, confidence, nerve, Mick Jagger, Keith Richards. For concision and hummability, John Fogerty, Creedence Clearwater Revival, and much too late in my life, Lennon and McCartney. Now, we all know the material by those people, and all that stuff is still true, but something that might be a little more interesting for everybody in this room is who my influences have been since I moved here in 1985. Now, those of you who were here heard Renee talk about our reconnection. We got to know each other in college and all that, and we reconnected in 1985. Now, Renee is not an influence on my songwriting. Her influence is limited to every other aspect. It was my parents, my siblings, and Renee. And when I went to try to put this together in words, I had trouble finding a place to start, so I didn't. It's really broad, and it's really deep, and it's I could say, we reconnected in 1985, and it's now 2019, so something good of sustainable value happened.
35 years or
And
so.
it's really hard for me to summarize and put that all together. In my inner world, there is a whole lecture about Renee with chapters still to write. But, the things that I think of are so cliche. I'm embarrassed to say them. I think, well, she's kind and she's pretty and she's smart. And last night we were playing at Avenue A, and you said like some funny thing, and I thought, oh, she's funny. I should fit that in somewhere. So I'll tell you one anecdote, and I don't even really know what it means. As I was thinking of it, it meant something to me, but I ran out of time, and so I can't tell you. All I can do is tell you the anecdote. Over 30 years ago, I suggested to Renee that instead of splitting up our tips at the end of the night, we should put them in that Tupperware container.
Yes, I remember this.
Wow.
And Renee said, "Oh, okay." And the conversation is so mundane that I don't remember anything about it. I know it was my idea because I bring a certain fiscal prudence to our enterprise. But here's the thing, when you're 25 or 26 years old, the best part about your gig is at the end you split up that money. Your wallet was empty, now it's full. Your gas tank was empty, now it's full. Your stomach was empty, let's go to the kettle. So how would somebody be so willing to sacrifice that? And what does the word yes mean? I'm sure neither of us, it wasn't my intention. I wasn't intentionally saying, hey, why don't you set aside 20% of your income for the rest of your life? But even in a more limited way, how does somebody say yes to something like that? And I don't know, but this is the thought that crossed my mind. Renee and I were both raised in homes with a secure base by people who loved us, who respected us, who protected us. And I had to be a full-grown adult before I realized that that wasn't the norm. But when that's the environment you're raised in, you come to a new social construct and you expect people to respect you and you expect to give that back to them. And when somebody says, why don't you commit, all of this money for the rest of your life, you go, no, I don't think he'll siphon that off to his Sierra Nevada fund. And I haven't, as far as she knows. But that little jar up there has bought like 4 state-of-the-art PA systems. We replace them as better stuff comes up. 25% is my car. All the maintenance and repair on all of our instruments, all the flights we've ever taken anywhere, and we've taken personal loans out and loaned money to our friends who needed a little hand every now and then. So whatever that is, that's part of what Renee's been doing. So, music. When I wrote the song Murder on the Pier in 1986, I wrote it on a white grand piano in the living room of none other than Michael J. Fox. I lived with him for a little while when I came down. We were friends growing up, and when I was in grade 9 and 10, we were in a band together. You guys have probably heard of the Rubber Band. Later we changed our name to Halex 5-Star after a ping pong ball, and we shortened that to Halex. I see a lot of nods. Well, when I wrote this song, it sounded like this. 2 young lovers went walking over the pier one night. The 2 young lovers got to talking. They got into a fight. Now, if I'm in a band, that's as much information as I want. If I'm the drummer, the bass player, the guitar player, I can work with that. That's a song, I think. But very soon after I moved here, I met Wade Preston, that Maddie talked about. And very soon after that, I met Bob Malone, who many of you know. He now plays with John Fogerty. And I got to sit next to them on their piano bench. And I got to stand behind their shoulder in our apartments and stuff and watch what they could do. And I'll never be able to play like them, but that made me practice and practice. And now the song sounds more like this. Two young lovers went walking over the pier one night. Two young lovers got to talking. They got into a fight. And I was able to write a song for Renee that goes. And other things, and that's thanks to Bob and to Wade. Shortly after I moved here, I joined a band that was led by 2 guys named Larry and Terry Tudor. They've taken a bad rap over the years, and deservedly so. But to actually be serious for a moment, I have to say, I don't know what everybody else's experience is, but my experience is the best songwriters have been strange people. And you have to weigh that stuff. And you get out of it what you put into it. And if I want people to accept me, I feel like I have to cast a wide net. And if I want access to that genius, you set your priorities. And the thing that I thank those two guys for is they removed a certain impediment. When I moved here, I was coming off 3 years on the road with a top 40 band. Bob Dylan was my favorite guy, but I didn't know how he made it, and I didn't aspire to that. And Larry and Terry, to them, Bob Dylan was the bar. It was actually a question of logic. Those songs are there. To shoot for anything less doesn't make sense. And so in the 4 years I spent with those guys, I raised my lyrical game, I tried harder, and I cared more. So.
Wow.
Now in 1993, I met another colorful character. Some people call him the Tote Dog, some people call him the Taj. I call him a lot of things. And I was introduced to him by a mutual friend named Kelly Hurrigan, and she approached me and said, I have a friend named Dave Takaji, I think he's pretty good. Could he sing a song at your Dylan party? So Dave came down into this yard, and he played a great version of Don't Think Twice, and he disappeared for a year. He came back the next year and he played a great version of Don't Think Twice, and something clicked in me, and I thought I should get to know that guy. And another mutual friend said, oh yeah, you like his covers, you should hear his original stuff. And this mutual friend, a guy named Bob Millay, gave me a cassette tape. And on that tape were songs called Building My Home, The Colors You Hide, and Waiting for the Red Line, and a whole bunch of others. And the tape had an impact on me. And Renee and I were dating at the time, and so we set up a double date. We went and met Dave and his girlfriend at Mr. Pocket's, the pool home. And while I was sinking the 8-ball for a third victory in a row, I turned to the Kaj and I asked them, besides Bob Dylan, who are your influences? And he said, and I was not surprised to hear this, Bruce Springsteen and Elvis Costello. And what was interesting about that is I've never known anybody to be influenced by just two guys. Like, who listens to two guys? And so I guess that was enough to chew on, because we didn't hang out again for another year. And then out of the blue, he calls me and he asks me to join his band by September. And I did. Now, the part of this story that's missing is those 3 songs I mentioned. Now, you probably don't know the names of those songs, and I'm sorry about that, because the question of how did Dave influence my songwriting, it comes down to this. He imbues his songs and his characters. Sometimes it's mundane things, sometimes it's heartbreaking human material, but he imbues these songs and these characters with hope. And how I had listened to and performed songs like Born to Run and Badlands and Thunder Road, and never once thought to myself, these are songs about hope. I have no response for that. But I think that what had to happen, the difference between those songs and the 3 titles that you don't recognize, is that those unknown songs came to me absent the opinion-forming apparatus of fame, television, radio, adoring audiences, absent even like a hot girl coming up in the middle of a gig and saying, hey, can you play Serious Girl? I had to, and so I think over time something clicked in my analytical songwriting mind where I said, why do these songs give me this feeling? And Dave can do a lot of things with his songs. He knows how to rhyme words, and he can play G, C, and D, and both other chords. what sifted to the top was the presence of hope. And I thought my songwriting would be better if I had some of that. And I got a song called "A River Is Gone," and the song I played about my dad a little earlier, they have that stuff in them, and they wouldn't if it hadn't been modeled to me by Dave DeCarlo. So on balance, what I learned from Dave has been worth the kind of daily and weekly indignities that I've had to suffer in every other aspect of our friendship.
So it's another evening.
Let's see. Now, not all won't be the first time. Not all songs are. Although the craft of songwriting is serious, not all songs are serious, of course. Even if you're writing a novelty song or a dance song, you gotta have a part that everybody can sing along to. But some would argue that that's the only part that matters. I wouldn't. Otherwise, you could just, in some ham-fisted way, attach the name of somebody that you know to something and then start singing it, and that really isn't a song. Like my son Chase, when we were in the run-up to our Festivus party last year, ascribed a nickname to our friend Yoli. And, like her name isn't already sing-songy enough. Like he called her Ravioli Yoli. And you might think that screams out for a song, but you'd be wrong. Like, what are you gonna do? Ravioli, oh, 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 ravioli, oh. Obviously, that's not a song. That's two words forced together. Like, what would you do with your second verse? You kind of painted yourself lyrically into a corner. Unless the ravioli is bland, and you need to spice it up a little with some guacamole, 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 I'm actually surprised at how well that went.
Oh, that was so
I had to put that in there. I think we need a little comic relief. Things were pretty serious there for quite a while. If that's all there was to songwriting, then guys like Paul Simon and Joni Mitchell would just look through the Rolodex and go, C. Little Chuck Waitley was about to turn out. His body threw a party and Chuck said, I'm going to show up early. I'm no procrastinator. And I'll be that way no matter what you say, because see you later, Chuckinator. See you later, Chuckinator. See you later, Chuckinator. See you later, Chuckinator. Come on your refrigerator. See you later, Chuckinator. Should have sent 2 hours later. See you later, Chuckinator. Arriving on time become capital crime. See you later, Chuckinator. We really are through with the comic relief. It's just not a lot of opportunity to fit those songs into the set list. Now, So to get back to something more serious, I don't feel like I've adequately gotten across to you guys how uncomfortable the process of collaboration is. So I thought of a comparison that you might be able to relate to. I'm sure you've all been through this. You come home and your significant other says to you, "Hey honey, we got the long weekend coming up. I got a great idea." And you say, "Oh, are we going to go to the U2 concert, the hockey game, go skiing in Mammoth?" No, I've signed us up for all 3 days of a personal growth seminar. It's over by the airport in a convention room in one of the hotels. And then she drags you there, and you're at 8 o'clock in the morning, you're leaping up out of your seat while some clown brings back and forth, And she goes, "Oh no, I know you've never heard his name, but he's a millionaire, and he'll teach you how to get your dreams as long as your dreams are to get $1 million. And then there's always this part, like halfway through the day, it's this. "Okay, now we're going to split up into groups and we're going to do an exercise." And you somehow endure that, and the next morning it's, "Today's exercise, I want you to pick a partner that you don't know." So, if you're cringing inside, just listening to this, this is how it feels when somebody comes up and says, "Oh, you play guitar?" "Yeah, I play guitar too. You want to get together and jam?" No. They go, "Oh, I see on your song list, you're a songwriter. I got some ideas. You want to put our heads together and see what?" No, I don't. So I want you guys to feel a little of this. Yeah. We're going to collaborate on a song. Find a partner. So how are we going to do this? Now, one of the things I like to do whenever I write a song is I like to come up with the entire arrangement and the tempo and the feel before I write a note or a word. So our feel and our tempo, it's going to be kind of a Temptation sort of thing. Papa was a rolling stone, that kind of thing. All right? And the Temptations, they had like different singers. They had somebody who could sing high and the guy who could sing low, and then the guy who could sing like everybody else. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have the girls in the front 2 rows. You guys sing the hook in the high register. The guys in the front 2 rows, we got 1, 2, 3. Okay, the guys in the front 2 rows and the chuckinator, you have to sing the low part, and then everybody else will sing the part in the middle. Okay, so that's going to be our arrangement.
Can I get back there in the video?
Yeah, after I get away from the camera.
Let me know.
Okay, so now, what's our subject material going to be? Now, what we've learned from the lecture so far is what Leonard Cohen and Bono and guys like to do is they like to come up with names of their friends and then invent some implausible scenario and insert their friends in there. So, can anybody suggest the name of a friend that I could use? That's interesting and spontaneous. Let's see. The Kaj. What has he done? What does he deserve? What has he brought on himself through a lifetime of poor judgment and malfeasance? Okay, I got an idea. Our hook will be, "Who kicked the Kaj's ass?" Okay? And we got to find an appropriate key, I think, for an intimidating song like this. F sharp minor should accommodate all our voices. So, the ladies, you're going to sing "Who Kicked the Kaj?" Then the men in the first couple of rows in the chuckinator, "Who kicked the Kaj?" And then everybody is going to say, "Who kicked the Kaj's ass?" Now, I'll sing it for you once, and then we'll do it together. Okay, so here's our key, here's our rhythm. Okay, do it with me. And the girls would go like this. 1, 2, 3. Who kicked the cause? Who kicked the cause? Who kicked the cause's ass? Who kicked the cause? Who kicked the cause? Who kicked the cause's ass? Okay, that is sounding like a good chorus. So, well, now we got to come up with a verse, but before we do, let's that line, who kicked the cause's ass, let's give it a little je ne sais quoi. So while we're snapping our fingers, let's move our head back and forth and plug our noses, okay? So it'll sound like this. Who kicked the cause's ass? Try it. Who kicked the cause's ass? There, now that's going to give us that sort of Clockwork Orange street menace that we're looking for. Okay, so the verse, what are we going to do?
Why'd they kick his ass?
Now that's a good question. What individual, what group, what shadowy entity would want retribution or punishment?
The Hellstrom.
That'll be our verse. It'll be an inquiry as to who had the means and the motive. So when we get to the verse, I'll sing a line, and you guys sing, who kicked the cause's ass? I'll sing another line, you sing it back again. Then I'm going to sing 3 lines. And you guys will be temptations cool. You'll wait, and then when your moment arrives, you'll kick into a double chorus and bring it home. All right? So, here's our key. Ladies, men, everybody else, okay. Let's get the rhythm going. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Who kicked the cause?
Who kicked the cause?
Who kicked the cause's ass? Who kicked the cause?
Who kicked the cause?
Who kicked the cause's ass?
They got him in a lineup down at the station.
Who kicked the cause's ass?
The California Cup, King and Kurt Bacon.
Who kicked the cause's ass?
Maybe you remember a dry September when the concussion song hit his mom.
Yeah.
But if you go down to Crenshaw and a tea shop,
Who kicked the cause's ass?
you can hear the Hillstruck hum.
Who kicked the cause's ass?
The cause,
Who kicked the cause's ass? Who kicked the cause's ass?
the cause.
Who kicked the cause's ass?
Who did it?
Who kicked the cause's ass? Who kicked the cause's ass? Who kicked the cause's ass?
Shadube.
That was big. Yeah.
Well, a few years ago, it crossed my mind that there are 3 kinds of songs that I would like to have written. I would like to have written a...
Hitch.
I thought somebody would come up with that. And that is so obvious. I'm just going to go on to number 2. I would like to have written a song that worked its way into the public consciousness through some other means than radio or that kind of thing. Examples of this are This Land Is Your Land, Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen, and Wagon Wheel, and there are others. Each of these songs has an astonishing story behind them. We've all heard the story about Wagon Wheel. I don't know. I know the story of the writing of This Land Is Your Land, but I don't know the arc of it becoming popular. Leonard Cohen's song, when he gave his album to his record company that had the song Hallelujah on it, his record company refused it. They wouldn't print it, and he had to go to a small independent record company called Passport, and they put it out there. And his record company said, "Leonard, we know you're great. We just don't know if you're any good." whatever that means. And so the popularity of that song was carried by singers initially. If you're used to your whole career singing, you know, she loves to move, she loves to groove, she loves the loving things, you know, all night, oh, every night, so baby, hold tight. Wow, she said, any way you want it. And then you get to sing, I've heard there was a God above, but all I ever learned from love was how to shoot at someone who outdrew you. It's not a complaint that you hear tonight, and it's not someone who's seen the light. It's a cold and it's a broken hallelujah. That makes an impression. And singers and songwriters took that song, and now we know it, you know, we know that it's an extremely popular song, but we can lose sight of the fact that all of those songs were not hits when they were written. It took a long, long time, and that would be fun to be part of that kind of history. And the third kind of song I would like to write is one that seems like it was there like it's always been there the very first time you hear it. How many roads must a man walk down? I pulled into Nazareth feeling about half past dead. It's there in the first line. It's there in Levon's voice. It's there in that chorus and the magnificent piano runs of Garth Hudson. It was always there. I try to imagine a world before the lines busted flat in Baton Rouge, waiting on a train. Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose, riding on the city of New Orleans. For me, there's those songs and a handful of others, The Big Bang, and Here We Are. Now, I haven't written any of those songs. I don't lose any sleep over it. But in the songs of mine that have endured a little for me, a few themes emerge. Am I a good person? Am I a bad person? Is the world a good place? Is it a bad place? And we live in a country that prosecutes a policy of separating children from their parents at our border. And sometimes, in our custody, those children die. Isn't that proof that the world is a bad place and that people are evil? Jumping ahead a little and taking the scale down, I'm sure that, like me, everybody in this room sometimes struggles with their own behavior, mistakes they've made, things they wish they wouldn't have said. And in this convoluted way, sometimes we feel the need to present ourselves as better than we are. Less judgmental, less envious, harder working, more loving, kind, patient, more successful, and certainly in the age of social media, happier than we are. And it's crossed my mind that maybe a step towards a more authentic happiness would be to give ourselves and each other a little bit of a break a little more often. And if you think about like the two worst things you ever did in your life, the two worst lies, the two worst betrayals, the most egregious, pettiest, meanest acts that you did to somebody, nobody in this room would be able to stand up and say it out loud. But I'm just as sure that no matter what the acts were, no matter how bad, compared to the rest of us, they would be entirely forgivable. Nobody in this room designed a policy to separate children from their parents. And I would submit that when you're being hard on yourself, it's not because the behaviors were so bad, it's because you fundamentally are so good and you want to be better. Now, great songs. Great songs foster empathy. And through that magic music portal, we get to walk in the steps of others and others in ours. And we're reminded that no matter how lonely our road is, that somebody's been there before. And so we're not truly alone. I'll leave you with this story. When my grandfather died, my mother returned to her childhood home and the farm on the prairies of Saskatchewan. One afternoon, she and my grandmother were taking down photographs from a wooden cabinet, and she saw a picture and she didn't recognize the face, and she asked who it was. And while she wiped away her tears, my grandmother explained, "You had an older brother that you never met. He died when he was 4 years old of a disease that would be routinely treatable today. And his name was Albert. And I don't know how many times my grandmother wiped a tear as she let her eyes fall over that one remaining photograph of her lost son. She never spoke of it to my mother for over 60 years. But like her arms and her legs and her heart, that memory was part of who she was. And my takeaway from that story is that we're all so much more than what the eye can see. We're more than what we can share with each other, even those that are closest to us in our own home. I don't know what it means. You know, I wish for everybody in this room the best of all possible lives. For me, as I face the challenges ahead, the disappointments, the difficulties that are bound to come my way, I'm going to try to remember to give just about everybody a little bit of a break. Through the circling wind and the dust bowl summers, her tears for the lost ones, your mother hid somehow. Across broad prairie shoulders, God hung an immigrant's burden, but you didn't complain. You wouldn't know how. Instead you made it through. So this one's for you. I thank you, Mother. That river is behind me now. Police dog a howling, the blur of the billy club, hell walking down the street. You could raise eyebrows, and from the broken old shoes sprang songs on the buses, long dangerous highways through the sundown towns. Somehow you made it through. So this one's for you. I thank you, brother. That river is behind me now. Heroes flash through your world, maybe once in a lifetime, like a comet dividing the black and the blue. But some people are like that northern star. They shine with every setting sun the whole night through. Life's last casualty keeps me tortured and turning, and thinking I'll drown. I'll know when tomorrow arrives clean at midnight, and I wake standing on a solid ground. I'll follow them footprints along the shore. I'll plant my home where there ain't no more, because that river, that bloody river, that river, that killing river, you cross that river, and the river is behind me now. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Maddie, for the opportunity. Enjoy the rest of your night.
I told you. She wants to get a picture. I told you.
Everybody's really doubting if this is.
Yeah, I thought it was. I know. I had to really sell this one. They're in here like sardines. Thank you. That was awesome.
Thank you for listening.
What a goof he was. Guys, go get some dessert, get something to drink, have pasta. Right?
Question answer.
I don't know. Does anybody have questions for Andy? Or you just want to go drink? I'm thinking you just want to go drink, right? Renee may have a few questions for him.
Renee might have a
Let's go eat.
Let's go eat. Come on, we put food away from you.